So, here I am, headset on, smart shirt, facing the camera, in front of a bookcase, ready to do my video conference call. But it's not a video conference call, it's a video to promote my book, which happens to be sitting here on the bookshelf, of course, and it's called An Accidental Salesman, Stories from 40 Years in International IT Sales, by me, Ian Cummins. Probably the story I've told most often, and the one I start the book with, is the story of the day my car ended up in a river in sleepy Suffolk. And I'll tell you about it now. The fateful day started quite normally. I was driving to an appointment with a company that I'd never visited before, located in a very rural area north of Ipswich. When I'd arranged the appointment, I'd asked them for directions, and they told me that the most sensible thing I could do was to drive to the local village called Debenham and ask someone there to get directions. So at about 9 o'clock in the morning, sunny day, I parked outside the post office in Debenham, went inside and bought a Mars bar. Other confections are available. Having explained where I was going, I asked for and received clear directions to my destination from the local postmistress. Walking outside about 5 minutes after I'd originally parked, I was, to say the least, surprised there was no sign of my car. Now, having spent some time previously in London, my first thoughts was that my car must have been stolen. I tried to keep calm, but I'm sure I was in a state of shock when I went back into the shop, as the staff immediately asked me if I was all right. "My car's gone," I said. The friendly postmistress took me back outside the shop and asked me where I'd left it. I pointed to where we were standing. "Right here," I said. With what was no doubt the product of generations of rural wisdom, she looked round and replied, "Well, it ain't here now." At this point, we both noticed a young woman with a young child in a pushchair on the opposite side of the street, approaching us from about 300 yards away. She was shouting and gesturing, and as we walked towards her, it became clear that she was saying, "There's a car in the river." Even in my shocked state, I was able to reach the immediate conclusion that this was likely to be my car. And as we walked further onwards to the point where the car, well, at least the rear half of it, was clearly visible, my assumption was proved to be correct. There was my car in the river. Suddenly it came back to me. The car was almost new, and earlier that day I'd had to hold the car stationary on a steep hill in Ipswich. I'd then noticed that the handbrake needed a particularly hard pull, a couple of inches further than normal, to fully engage it. I was pretty sure that I hadn't been this thorough with the handbrake when parking in front of the post office. Looking at the position it had been parked in and where it was now, it was obvious what had happened. The car had rolled forward down the gentle slope of the road, and with the slight right-hand lock that it would have had on it from parking, it had carried on into a full 90-degree turn, found an 8-foot gap in the hedge, and stopped only when it hit the riverbed. At this point, just as discussions between myself, the postmistress and the young mum were about to get underway, another woman arrived, on horseback. She was in full riding gear, jodhpurs, black jacket, riding hat, the works. "Don't worry," she said. "My husband owns the local garage. I'll go and fetch him. Go on, boy." the last part being addressed to her horse, and they trotted off down the street. Within a couple of minutes, time for only a small crowd to gather, a battered old van arrived, and out got two men, one old, one young, both in oil-stained boiler suits that attested to them being mechanics. The older of the two was possessed of the same strain of rural wisdom that had been demonstrated earlier by the postmistress. He solemnly looked at the rear end of my car, turned to me and said, "That's in the river, all right." He turned back and addressed his younger companion. "Boy, go and get the tractor." Whilst the younger mechanic went about his errand, the garage owner tried to reassure me. "You know, 50 weeks of the year there ain't but a couple of inches of water in that stream. That's a shame, it's been raining recently, so it's running a couple of feet right now." In a couple of minutes, the young mechanic returned, driving a large blue tractor.